everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from March 27th, 2020, and I'm recording this on September 25th, 2020, and think about it for a minute. Been a long day. So, as always, we're looking back at the hot comics from the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hot Comics of the Week. And we do this to try to understand what made these comics hot, how the market responded to them in the time since. Did they cool off? Would patience have paid off? So that we all make better decisions about which comics we chase, which comics we're patient on. I will say this is the last week that I did the Cash or Trash. So this will be the last week for quite a while until I think I picked it back up in July. Where I have kind of my expectations at the bottom of these. Also, I will let you know right now, I am planning to take next week off. I have not taken a break from this list since June. And with all the stuff I've had going on at work, I'm going to take a break off next week. So just fair warning, since I got through all my, I decided to wait till I got through all the Cash or Trash lists that I did before I took that break so that I was at least accountable for my predictions. So without further ado, let's get into this week's list. We have 20 books this week. They had completely different lists. So yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover. So first up, we only had one Option News book, and it was Prodigy #1. And basically, this is part of the Mark Millar-verse that's supposedly coming to Netflix, and he said this was one of the shows that was coming. It was really only going for $5, but Tom and Key Collector was like, there was a 1,400% increase in sale. Despite it only going for $5, I still called it a trap because I was really like, this Millar-verse, he said a lot of things, and most of them haven't come true. That there was really no reason to go out and try to buy this. And to a certain degree, that's been true. You could call it steady. It's still going for basically $5, but there's been almost no sales of individuals. There have been a few sales of the entire set of 1 through 6. And those are going for around 20 to 25. But yeah, this is just a book that doesn't have a lot of interest right now. I've heard it's actually a pretty good series, so you might want to, if you're interested in reading it, now would be a good time to pick it up because it's not really on anybody's radar at the moment. Next, we have Incredible Hulks 618. This is the Mark Brooks 1 in 25 Tron variant. And not exactly sure why this hit the list, other than it's a cool cover and people were kind of jumping on some of these Tron variants. Back then it was going for $100. I said this was an I'll be back. I didn't see this cover coming way down, but I didn't think it would necessarily sustain at $100. And that's been the case so far. It's dropped down to about a $60 to $70 book, but still a few sales. Still going for good money, just not quite that $100 range. Next, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. I should have said we're moving into covers. We have a bunch of covers this week. So yeah, we will talk about those. So next up is Guardians of the Galaxy #25, the Scotty Young 1 in 25 variant. This is not a typical Scotty Young kind of cover that you think about with kind of the chibi kind of young character kind of thing. And back there, this was going for $100. I call this one an I'll be back, and this one actually kind of turned into a trap. It's really only going for $20 to $35 right now. There's only been 4 sales in the last 90 days on eBay. Yeah, just hasn't sustained that interest, whatever caused that spark and caused it to jump back in March. Hasn't sustained. Next, we have Scream, Curse of Carnage #5. The Gideon 1 in 25. Back then, this was going for $30 right after release. I thought this one was a trap. This one actually was more of an I'll be back. Sorta. I was debating on where to put this. There's one sale. There's only been 3 sales recently. One went for $5. The other 2 went for $25. So you could argue this is a trap just because there's really not a sustained market. There's only been a couple of sales, but the sales 2 of the 3 sales went for still pretty decent value. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about this one other than there's not a lot of demand for it. So, our next book is Ghostbusters Year 1, #3, The Laddie 1 in 10, homage to Batman 251. Back then, this was a 25 plus book at release. I thought this one was a trap. This one's also kind of in that same category as the Scream thing. There's only been 3 recent sales. 10, 20, and 25 is what they went for. So when it does sell, it's still getting decent value, but just not much of a market for it. Yeah, so with that, we're going to move on to Mercy number 1. This is the Sun Kumanaki Virgin variant. I don't know how you pronounce that person's name. There was only 500 of these produced. This was a ECC, is that right? Yeah. Emerald City Comic Con variant is what it was supposed to be. It kind of really hit the market. Basically, pre-sales this was going for 20. Immediately on the aftermarket, it was up to 35. I thought this was a trap. This was also more of an I'll be back because it's still kind of going in the $20 to $30 range. So still decent value, less than that 35, but still decent around the value of what it was. The buy-in was originally. 9.8s though, there's only been 3 sales of those, 2 for 55 and 1 for 80. So not a lot of value here, not a lot of sales here, but a gorgeous cover. And if you can get it for basically the original buy-in, which is where it kind of is going at the $20 range, not really a trap necessarily, just not a high value book. Next we have Tarot number 4, the 1 in 50 Mooney variant. I also called this one a trap. I didn't particularly think this cover was anything impressive. This was a super low print book though. So it hit the list based on just one sale of $100 and the fact that there was only 2 other listings week of release. So there was only 1 sale and 2 listings week of release. So they're like, this has got to be super scarce. I still thought it was kind of a trap at $100. Seemed like a lot, that this cover wasn't that anything special about it. But I'm wrong. Still seems to be a fairly rare book. There's only been 4 sales in the last month, or last 90 days, 150, 150, 195, and 220. All the listings are 190 plus, so there's not a huge market for this, but it is going for higher than $100 consistently. $150 to $200 range. And so this one has been straight cash in terms of just like the value people are willing to spend when they buy it, but not a huge market for it. Next, we have Silver Surfer number 4. I'm not sure I really need to say much about this. This is an all-time great cover. We all know this cover. Back then, basically, it hit the list because there was a single Raw book that went for $22.50, which is a new record for Raw copy. This was obviously a near mint copy. Typical mid-grades are going for around $500. Right now, high grade, like what they claim very fine near mint, are going for around $800. Mid-grades are going for $400 to $500. An 8.5 goes for like $16 to $17. So this book is, I'm calling this steady. That this is a straight cash book. Doesn't seem like it's really jumped any in the last 6 months. But there hasn't really been any kind of fall off either. My guess is that Raw copy that went for such a high price was just a really, really nice Raw copy. With that, we're going to move into kind of a book of the moment. We're out of our covers for now. We may come back to a couple of covers, but I'll get into that later. Book of the moment was Spectacular Spider-Man 176, first appearance of Corona. And yeah, this hit the list for the second week in a row. Last week we were talking about it because it was going for around 20. Now it was going for 20 to 40. And double the number of sales. So that's why it hit the list again. My take on this was come on, man, what are we doing? I realized this was right at the beginning of everything shutting down and all the craziness. But this has been a come on, man. It's basically a $5 to $10 book now. People are tired of Corona. Both in terms of the comic and in terms of reality. So yeah, not much value here. With that, we're going to move into our comic buzz section for this week. And we have a few books here. First up is Thor 411, the first New Warriors. And this coincided with the announcement of a new Warriors book coming and a new team. So back then, this book jumped up to $20 for raw copies on average. 9.8s were going for $150. I thought this was a bit of a trap. Nobody had interest in New Warriors. The new series seemed to be about a new team, or at least some new characters. So wasn't sure why this would carry value, but it's really been more of an I'll be back. Raw copies are still averaging $10 to $15, so down, but 9.8s are actually up to around 200 is where the sales have been consistently there. I still call this overall down because there's just way more. The vast majority of sales are for raw copies. I made a note. I can't read it. I think there was only 3 9.8 sales. Yeah. So 3 or 4 9.8 sales. So yeah, the vast majority of books have come down, but when 9.8s are a little more valuable than they were back in March. Next, we have X-Men 155, the first appearance of the Brood, and this was basically because the Brood showed up in Hickman's story. There was a character, King of the Brood, that was going to be the Brood King. And yeah, so it caused this book to jump to $10, $15 with 9.8s going for $150. Again, I called it a trap because we never cared about the Brood. I realized stories can change how much we care about. New stories can change that, but I was going to be surprised if that held here. Again, more of an I'll be back. Still going for around $10 raw, but 9.8s are actually also up, 175, 225 range. Not many sales again, so still kind of consider this. Actually, I don't write down what I put on my slide. I'll have to look. But I would consider this probably down just in terms of maybe steady. Probably steady just in terms of value and the 9.8s. Next, we have our dumpster fire of the week. And this is Batman 664, the first appearance of Ellie, which was a little girl that kind of had clown makeup and dark hair that everybody was specking. This was Punchline as a child. This was Punchline as a child. And so back then, it was only going for $5 to $10. But there was a huge 1,600% increase in sales. And this is all about this speculation that there was going to be a retcon that this was actually Punchline. James Tynion insisted there wasn't. That's why I figured that I had to call this a dumpster fire, because we were just chasing everything. It was influenced by the other books that have hit the list the last couple of weeks, because we were chasing anything that might possibly have anything to do with Punchline, and it just seemed stupid. And now it's at WTF. What the? It's still going for $5 to $15, although a 9.8 recently sold for $30, which is about right. But people are still paying $10, $15 for this thing fairly consistently, based on listings that still claim that this is possibly Punchline. We've seen Punchline's origin, and what was it, Batman, Detective Comics? No, the Joker special. And the Joker 80th anniversary special, she has a different name. It's not this little girl. People are still advertising it on eBay as this little girl, and people are still buying it for $10, $15 advertised that way. Yeah, come on. We got to be better. We got to be smarter. All right, we're going to move away from that into another really good book. We've had a couple of really good books on this list already, and this is definitely one of those. Vampirella, #1. Not really sure why, but first appearance of Vampirella put a 9.4, hit a new record of $7,200, which was a $2,200 increase over the previous record for a 9.4. That is why this hit the list. There have been no 9.4 sales since, at least according to Go Collect. But this is a straight cash book. We know this is a fantastic book. I'm calling it steady. Values right now, you're looking at $400 to $600 to get you into a raw. 9.2 is going to cost you around $2,100. Yeah, so fantastic book, and definitely a nice palate cleanser from that Batman book. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man 15. So the good books keep coming here. And this is the first Craven. And this had everything to do. There had been some rumors about Craven getting a Sony movie, because obviously they did Venom. They were doing Morbius. That Craven might be another character that they would do a movie for. But really what sparked this hitting the list was somebody, based on those rumors, somebody did a Photoshop of Jason Momoa as Craven that went around the internet and caused buzz and caused this book to hit the list. Because there were no specific rumors at the time. Mid-grades were going for $1,000. The high sale on a high-grade raw was $2,300. Now raw copies, kind of that mid-grade, are $400 to $500. 9.0 is going for $5,000. I still call this a straight cash book. It might be down a little bit from the craziness. We've actually had rumors since that, yes, they are going to make a movie. But yeah, straight cash book on this one for sure. So, brings us to our last category of the week. We kind of move it out of comic buzz or Marvel MCU buzz, Sony buzz, I guess is what the last one is. And we're just talking Star Wars books. We had 6 different Star Wars books, on the list this week. 2 of them were just covers, but I decided to group them with the other Star Wars books. The first is Star Wars Annual number 4, the John Tyler Christopher 1 in 25. This is a really hard book to track down. This Darth Vader cover, negative space Darth Vader cover, is very cool. Back then, 2 were listed and immediately sold. 1 for $65, 1 for $85. Like basically instant sales is why they put this on the list. My take on this was I'll be back. Really, this belonged in the ghost category. This book appears to be a ghost. There have been, let's see, 2 sales since, or 2 sales in the last 90 days. Both were right at $100. But they're none listed. Like, this book just doesn't pop up that often. When it does, it sells quick. Sort of for whatever the person will list it for. There doesn't appear to be, although the prices haven't got crazy. We'll see if somebody lists it for $500, it might not go. But, yeah, just a really hard to find, really cool Darth Vader cover. And there's definitely a market for it. Next, we have Star Wars Legacy number 1. This is the WonderCon variant that was limited to 1,000. Back then, there was a sale for $100. And this is sort of another ghost. Right now, there's only been 1 sale. And it was for $310 for 9.8. So it's different than the raw copy that went for $100. And there are no listings as of when I looked at this. So yeah, this book is another one that's just super hard to find. There's only 1,000 copies and people aren't putting it up for sale very often. Now, I say that and there are probably listings today, but when I looked this up on Wednesday, a couple days ago, there were none. So, next, so those were our 2 Star Wars covers. Next, we're moving into Disney Plus spec side of Star Wars. And first up, we have Kanan, the Last Padawan number 1. The first appearance of Sabine Wren. We're going to talk about this a little bit because of the next book. Back then, this book was hitting $10. 9.8 was hitting $90. I thought this was a little bit of an I'll be back. I thought there might be a lull because we didn't know for sure if she was coming. This has been straight cash. Raw copies now are 10 to 25. 9.8 is $250. But despite the fact that this had long been listed as first appearance, CGC recognizes it as the first appearance of Sabine Wren. She appears. She speaks. And yet, I don't know if they actually say her name. I think they put a little box like with her name in it toward the bottom, but I don't remember now for sure. We got a 180, 181 situation going on here because the market has decided, despite CGC, that that's the cameo and Kanan, the Last Padawan number 6 is the first appearance of Sabine Wren. I think this has a lot to do, it seems like it has a lot to do with Key Collector saying it's a cameo and not the first for number 1. Even though CGC doesn't say that. Either way, the number 6 book back then was going for 20 plus. It was on the list as well. Now that's a $35 to $60 book. 9.8s for that one are $350 to $400. That's become the book, with number 1 being the secondary book for Sabine Wren and probably for Hera and Ezra and Zeb, all the characters except Kanan, because you get a scene with them and then you jump into the flashback of his story. That's the series, and then they don't appear again until issue 6. So 6 is their first cover. So the market seems to have decided that 6 is their first appearance and 1 is the cameo. CGC, at least at this point, disagrees. I sort of agree. I'm a 180 as the first appearance of Wolverine guy, though, too. But yeah, so that's where the market is on those 2 books. And our last two books were finally there. Are both Star Wars: The Clone Wars #1. We have the regular cover. The first appearance of Ahsoka Tano is the first one we're going to talk about. Back then, this had jumped all the way up to a $150 to $200 book raw. 9.8s were going to $500 to $600. I said I'll be back. Still kicking myself for passing on a copy of this for like $50 back in like November of last year. And now that book is a $400 to $800 book, $1,400 to $1,600 for a 9.8. It's a straight cash homie book. There's no doubt about it. If it wasn't for maybe the Miles Morales books, this would maybe be the book of the year, along with its partner we're about to talk about. But yeah, Ahsoka's been super hot. We still think she's coming in The Mandalorian, despite her not appearing in the trailer. It'll be interesting to see if the book cools any if she doesn't appear, but the show's coming at the end of October, so not too much longer to wait to find out. And of course, that brings us to our last book of the week, Star Wars: The Clone Wars #1, the special edition, which was limited to 1,000 copies. Back then, raw copies were 400, 9.8s were 1,000. Yeah, now raw copies are 1,000 to 2,000, 9.8s 3,500 to 3,800 for recent sales. Ahsoka, Star Wars in general is super hot. Ahsoka is maybe the hottest character amongst them. Next to maybe Miles is the only character currently hotter than Ahsoka. I think you could definitely make that argument. I definitely underestimated where these books were going to go. Hence, I didn't buy them when I had a chance. So that is this week's list. We had 20 books, 6 of them related to Star Wars stuff. We had a bunch of covers. Hopefully, we had a bunch of really good books too this week, along with a little bit of trash, a little bit of books that weren't great. But we had Silver Surfer #4, ASM 15, Vampirella #1. We had these Clone War books. A lot of cool stuff this week. I want to thank you guys for watching. A reminder, I'm planning to take a break next week from the list. I appreciate that you guys watch every week. Hopefully I will be back in 2 weeks, no problem. So with that, we will catch you next time.